Hello, it's Amy, and I'm back again with the Journal of Emily Shore. We are beginning chapter 12. We are on page 235, and we are starting the year 1838. If you're just stumbling across these videos, we are reading the Journal of Emily Shore, which is the diary of a teenage girl in the United Kingdoms in the 1830s, but it wasn't published until 1891 after it was edited by Emily's siblings. So we begin on January 3rd at Bartley Lodge. Over the course of this chapter, we're going to be going to Worthing, Bevis Mount, Jersey. So January 3rd, Wednesday, we took Tilla for the first time among the glades in the depth of the forest. She and I mounted the ponies and proceeded at foot's pace, accompanied by Papa and Arabella walking. We went to Midstead by our favourite forest walk. On emerging from the forest to the foot of Midstead Hill, we did not enter the village, but turned to the right, re-entered the forest, and went nearly to the keeper's lodge. Then turned into the forest at our right, and passed through a long succession of lovely and solitary glades and commons, till we came into our own common by the Lyndhurst Road. In one part we were stopped by a stream which was dry in summer, but is now very full, deep, and rapid, and runs bubbling and sparkling along through its lovely banks, rugged and winding, fringed with trees and shrubs. The forest is now filled with streams like this, and most beautiful they are. We followed its course a long time, looking for a place to cross, and hesitating at many spots for fear my pony should lie down in the water. At last, while Papa was looking for another ford at a distance, Tilla and I encouraged one another and splashed through, shouting with laughter. Of all these, by far the most interesting to me was the number for last month of the Penny magazine. And there's some ... so there must be something missing here that was not added in or was, unreadable. Although I think, from the introduction, Emily had quite nice handwriting. But regardless, something is missing, so there must have been a delivery of some sort of reading material. But she says, of all these, by far the most interesting to me was the number for last month of the Penny magazine, which I had been longing to see, for I knew it was to contain my articles. I seized it, but before I had opened it, Papa, also in great glee, took it into his own hands and looked into it while I poured out the tea. My brothers and sisters, too, and even Tilla, were all watching anxiously, and I believe all were delighted to see in the title page the words, "Account of a Young Cuckoo," and "The Golden-Crested Wren." My feelings were very odd at this moment. I can hardly explain them. So I'm actually in print, have actually begun my career as an authoress. I say career, for I fully hope to follow it up, and have begun it too at the age of 17, for though I am now 18, my birthday had not taken place when these articles were published. It seems very odd. 3 articles of mine are now in print, those which I have mentioned, and 2 anecdotes, and I shall soon see some more. At night, when I went into Tilla's room, she very coolly said, "Emily, if you ever become a very clever woman and distinguish yourself, I shall certainly write your life, and this night shall enter into it." "Oh, Tilla," I said, shouting with laughter, "what a ludicrous idea. That's taking it for granted that I am to die first. But I may write your life while you are still alive, may I not? I am determined to do it." January 19, Friday. When I had gotten to bed, I lay awake for some time, watching the snug appearance of the chamber. The chintz curtains of the windows and bed, the firelight dancing in the ceiling, the prints over the chimney-piece and on the walls, all looked the picture of comfort. The fireplace is opposite my bed, so I watched the smoke going up the chimney, illuminated by an occasional spark and sometimes an aspiring flame. It is particularly pleasant to lie awake musing when the room is cheerfully lighted with fire, and I did so tonight with indescribable enjoyment, thinking of all sorts of things, wise and foolish, grave and gay. January 27, Saturday. So that, on the whole, I think I have crammed a good deal of fresh information into my pate today, and it is very encouraging for me to know that without any trouble I shall retain nearly all of it. Nevertheless, as often happens with me, in the middle of my reading, the conviction of the utter hopelessness of ever learning a millionth part of all I ought to learn, and of all the littleness of what I have already learned, suddenly darted into my mind so forcibly that it cast a gloom over me, and in a melancholy and desponding fit, I felt for a time inclined to give up altogether the gigantic task of acquiring knowledge. And I seriously debated whether I should not do so. For the thought that by cultivating my mind I might render myself someday useful to others finally decided the question. Otherwise, had only my own gratification been concerned, I doubt whether I might not have come to a different determination. And this is no new story with me. My despondency at times is almost overpowering. January 28, Sunday. I also learnt by heart, by reading once over, all that I did not know perfectly of my favourite poem, Spenser's Hymn of Heavenly Love. I remember the delight I felt when I first dived into Spenser's treasures. I was barely 12 years old, and my attention was first led to him by meeting a few verses of this hymn quoted in Bowdler's selections. I think I relished it as much even then as I do now. The greediness with which I devoured Mother Hubbard's tale and some of the eucoligs. I really think it hardly possible for a child to delight more in poetry than I always did. At the age of 10, I could say every syllable of Montgomery's Wanderer of Switzerland, a poem in 6 parts, and at 12, I knew almost the whole of Rokeby, though I had made no attempt at learning it. It would be very interesting to me to look back and trace the progress of my fondness for poetry and the gradual change of my taste. I think I could do this in some measure, and I shall try it someday. January 29th, Monday. After luncheon, I took Tilla's likeness while Arabella read to her the 2nd volume of Devereux. It is very disagreeable to hear one's own work, and Devereux in particular sinks amazingly thereby in my estimation. Or rather, the emphasis should be different in that sentence. It is very disagreeable to hear one's own work, and Devereux in particular sinks amazingly thereby in my estimation. I am quite ashamed of such a trumpery tale. My next, if I ever write another, shall be better, I hope. The style is absurdly florid, and the language of some of the characters is too sentimental. Papa has met Blanco White at Oxford, and describes him as a light-haired, light-complexioned, singularly ugly man, until he speaks not pleasing, but in conversation highly agreeable. His friends are all devotedly fond of him. How melancholy and how strange that a man like him should not merely have fallen, but relapsed into Socian errors. Papa read to us his touching letter to Charles Butler on the subject of Aeneas MacDonald's brutal speech. Tilla listened attentively, and when it was ended remarked, "I do not envy the feelings of Butler when he read that letter." And then in brackets here comes a story of grief, the news of the death of a beloved friend. But that does take us to the end of the entries for January of 1838. So perhaps we'll leave it there for today, and we'll come back tomorrow for February, and likely into March of 1838.